Hello, my name is Morgan Gray, and welcome back to the Afrocentric Podcast.
We got London on the track. Got my baby with me, you know. If she get what she want, she want. I remember when I get high. I'm so high. Looked up, baby, then say goodbye. I tie my tie, she no longer cry. Look you in your eye and tell you that I know she living for a nigga, dying for a nigga. I whip that pussy with no boulders, jumping all a nigga. That pussy look just like a cut, a soaking cutler nigga. Yeah, I'm a freak, you know I'm pulling up the luster nigga. I'll never snooze on you. Yeah, I'ma give you a couple bands, want some more booze on you. Hey, I'ma sit back and pay attention like school on you. Yeah, I'll shoot inside that pussy like a wood on you. Goddamn, I'm sorry, B. I know you accept my apology. I know that that's fat.
We don't funk with racism. We don't funk with people who don't support the LGBTQ plus community. And baby, we damn sure don't funk with anybody who don't love a beautiful black queen, baby. You see this tape.
You don't let nobody act black and then go home and be white.
It only takes a little bit of white brainwash to activate the coon chip in the average Negro.
And a lot of white folk have demonstrated eloquently that they don't have no sense.
And we are back with the Afrocentric Podcast. I am more than elated to be back with you guys this week. The title of this episode is Freestyle 17. I built the table. Because I did. I'm a motherfucking carpenter, okay? I pulled out my little chisel, my hammer, and my saw, and I went to town and I built the table, okay? So in this episode, we're going to be exploring the history and the future of Black love and Black relationships, as well as discussing the impact of slavery on Black families and Black relationships, as well as the resilience of Black love throughout history, okay? And I'm really excited because I want to have this conversation with you guys so that we can look at the future and discuss the challenges and different opportunities that we're facing as Black couples today. So get ready to celebrate with me. We're going to be celebrating the strength and the beauty of Black loves while also acknowledging the challenges and ongoing struggles of being in love, being in a relationship, and or being married as a Black person. I hope you guys enjoy it. Thank you again for the support, and let's get into the topic.
When I asked you guys earlier, what do you bring to the table? All the things that you guys mentioned are easily replaceable by a 21-year-old girl. So how are you going to keep a guy around that has options? We asked you guys that question for a purpose. Most women provide the same things over and over again, and if they don't provide those same things they provide, I have money and status, as if men care about that. We don't.
But what happens if you're
So what
not
do men
you
care
guys?
That's the scary part. You don't know.
Nothing.
That's what I'm trying to say. No. That's the scary part. Like, you don't know. See, here's the difference between men and women. Men have to understand women to attract them and know what they want. Women, on the other hand, don't have to understand men or know what they want to attract them. That is why women are able to live in bizarro world and think, I'm going to bring myself to the table and that's enough. But the reality is this. You bring enough for sex, but you don't bring enough for a relationship. Most girls have enough to attain a guy, but they don't have enough to retain a guy.
Before we can start any real conversation about Black love and Black relationships, we really have to go back into time and we have to discuss the impact of enslavement and how the impact of enslavement durably halted the Black family and Black relationships as a whole. So slavery, as you can imagine, had an extremely devastating impact on Black families and Black relationships. We are all aware that Black families were very often, they were split apart. They were sold to different slave owners or sold to different parts of the country. And this legacy begins with the separation and the trauma that still affects Black families today. And I want to stop right there just because it's important to acknowledge how trauma lives in the body, how trauma is stored in the body, and trauma can be passed down back 3 generations. We're not talking about lifetimes, we're talking about generations. So you have to remember that that trauma that your grandma went through while your mom was being carried in her stomach, you were sitting in your mom's ovaries as a baby, and that trauma impacted you as well as her. So that is a number one of the most important things, because we know that families very well were separated. And again, that goes back to show you how during slavery, a lot of black families weren't often recognized, right? They weren't recognized as legal entities, and they were often subject to the whims of their slave owners. And the legacy of that separation and the trauma continues again to affect black families in a number of different ways. For example, it often contributes to a sense of mistrust and vulnerability in relationships, as well as the fear of abandonment or loss. And it can also lead to things like mental health issues like depression, anxiety, post traumatic stress disorder. Okay. Additional to that, the ongoing effects of systemic racism and discrimination can make it difficult for black families to access resources and support, which can further masturbate or make their issues even bigger. So, when we are looking at black love, black marriages, and black relationships, it's almost ignorant not to acknowledge the legacy of slavery and the impacts that it has had on black communities, and how we do not have the resources, or we just don't have it in a way where we can try to appeal and try to get over it. Okay. So slave owners often could separate these families at will, and selling family members off to different plantations or different regions led to a profound sense of loss, grief, and trauma. Even after slavery ended, black families often continued to face discrimination, violence, and this also included like the separation of children from their parents during this Jim Crow era. So this history of trauma and separation has an extremely lasting impact, and it is in many ways very negative, and this impact is placed upon black families and relationships. And again, it contributes to this legacy of mistrust and instability and vulnerability that we have within our community, and it shapes the issues that we have today. And again, it's important to realize that the issues that we have within the black community are specific to our community and only our community, because no one else has went through enslavement like our ancestors have.
Some owners respected slave marriages, but the marriages had no legal standing and could be broken apart at the owner's whim. Owners had their own reasons for pairing up certain slaves.
After I'd been at his place about a year, the master come to me and say, "You gonna live with Rufus in that cabin over yonder. Go fix it for living." I was about 16 years old and had no learning, and I was just an ignorant child. I say to myself, I's not gonna live with that Rufus. Well, the next day the master calls me and tells me, "Woman, I's paying big money for you, and I's done that 'cause I want you to raise me children. You a big portly gal. Rufus is a big portly man. I want y'all to bring forth portly children. I's put you to live with Rufus for that purpose. Now, if you don't want whipping at the stake, you do what I wants." Oh, I thinks about master buying me from the block, saving me from being separated from my folks. And then I thinks about being whipped at the stake. What am I to do? So I decides to do as the master wish. So I yields.
Although our ancestors went through enslavement and so many different traumatic battles, there is so much to say about the resilience of Black love, and it is portrayed through history, as well as the lack of resilience of Black love, which is often portrayed through history. So, throughout history, Black love has truly been seen as a source of resilience and strength for African American communities, despite the many challenges and obstacles they face as Black couples and Black families. So, from the enslavement era to the Jim Crow era, even to the present day, Black couples have had to navigate a range of social, economic, political barriers to their relationships, including laws prohibiting interracial marriage, economic equality, as well as systemic racism. Although they are going through these challenges, Black couples have found different ways to be able to build strong and supportive relationships that are often sustained through difficult time periods. So we see that Black love is celebrated. Black love is celebrated in literature, in music, and popular culture, and in many ways, it is a force for change and transformation. Pause. So I feel like that is something that is being missed right now, the celebration of Black love. Your parents and your parents' parents grew up watching Black love being celebrated, whether it was on Good Times, Florida and James, whether it was the Winslows on Family Matter.
I went to the movie alone, and you sat down next to me right after it started. But this time you didn't dump your soda all over me. I'm wearing you down, baby. I'm wearing you down.
You know, like you see, or Sanford and Son, from the motherfucking grave, Sanford missed his bitch.
I've never had pains like this before. Oh, this is the worst one I ever had, son. Oh, it's the worst one. This is a big one. I'm dying. You hear that, Elizabeth? I'm coming to join you, honey. Oh. Maybe that's Elizabeth.
I'm coming to you. I'm coming. That was Sanford. So, like, you see how the love is celebrated in popular culture and media all throughout the 90s. You see the celebration of Black love through music, the loss of Black love through music, and how truly impactful it truly was to the people, Black communities within the 1990s. And then you can see it all throughout literature and even in real life, because so many of us have so many grandparents, great grandparents, or parents, or you yourself are an active participant in Black love. You have somebody got some aunties and some grandmas that's been married for 50, 60 years, and they done duked it out, battled it out, got their kids out the house and went on about their day. So Black love definitely is celebrated, and it has been celebrated. But I feel like within the past decade or the past 2 decades, there has been a need to stop showing it on TV, and it's like we're starting to grab away from it. So back to the topic. So during the same time, there are many forces working against Black love, and that includes stereotypes, negative portrayals in media, high rates of incarceration and poverty, as well as the ongoing discrimination and violence against Black people. So we have these challenges, but we always overcome. So despite these challenges, Black people continue to find ways to support each other, as well as to be able to build strong, resilient relationships that are rooted in the power of love and commitment. So keep that shit in mind. So now that we have most definitely focused on the positive examples of marriage and love, there are definitely some negative examples of marriage and love in the Black community. And you know me. So let's go ahead and hop into this history, because I think that it is very, very Interesting. So the first example that is negative, or a negative example within Black love and Black marriage within our community, can be seen through Frederick Douglass.
This is Anna Murray, and she is Frederick Douglass's first wife. So she was the first child of her parents to be born free in 1813 in Maryland. When she was about 17, 18 years old, she moved to Baltimore and really was living kind of an independent life. She had a job. She worked as a domestic worker. She had an income. She had friends. She lived in a community with other freed Blacks. And I think the legend has it that she met Frederick Douglass, who, by the way, was still enslaved, at church. They ended up falling in love. So, of course, the goal was that Frederick would get his freedom. Anna was able to help him do that. She took her money that she earned through her job and was able to give him money so that he could get a train ticket from Baltimore to New York where he could be free. She was able to get a sailor uniform through her job, working as a domestic worker. I think she was a laundress at the time. Got him a sailor uniform that he could wear as a disguise. And that's how he got to New York. When Frederick sent for Anna to come up north with him, she brought all of the things for them to start their life, like linens and clothing and dishes and all sorts of things to start their household. Anna and Frederick were married for over 40 years, I believe. They had 5 children together. And I really feel like her role in his success is so understated. Again, like a lot of these men that we know from history, he had a wife that really contributed to his success. As he was off traveling, giving speeches, making appearances, doing all this abolitionist work, Anna was at home holding down the household, taking care of the children, and a lot of times using the income that she was making from her job to support the family. The Douglass family was active in the Underground Railroad, and Anna was there to help a lot of these people that were coming to stay with them for shelter. She was cooking, she was cleaning, she was feeding these people. Like, she was a part of his success in this. Anna was loyal to him, and that's why it hurts my heart to think about the fact that there were a lot of rumors that he was not faithful to her. The women that he was rumored to have affairs with were white women. Like this woman, her name was Audley. She came from Germany and actually became a very close personal friend with him, like traveled with him, went to different conventions with him, translated his book into German. She actually lived with the Douglass family at one point. And there are letters that survive where she was saying some very unkind and very mean things about Anna. Audley was described at one point as one of his intellectual and emotional companions, which is so offensive considering he had a wife. How is this woman going to be your emotional companion and you have a whole wife living in your house? It's disgraceful. I don't think we have anything documented historically that sort of gives an indication of how Anna felt about what was going on, because you have to understand a lot of people were trying to discredit her husband, and it would not have been appropriate for her at this time. Remember, this is like the 1860s, 1850s. She would not have had a voice to speak publicly about how she felt, and she most certainly would not have gone to the tabloids to say anything. And I just hate the idea of thinking that she would have suffered in silence at the humiliation. When Anna passed away, roughly 2 years later, Frederick remarried a woman that was over 20 years younger than him. Her name was Helen Pitts, and obviously this marriage was very controversial. And FYI, the German lady, Audley, when she found out that they got married, she unalived herself shortly after hearing the news of their marriage. And again, during her lifetime, they had always denied any relationship between the two of them. So, I mean, it kind of puts that in perspective. This is Frederick over here. That's Helen, and I think that's her sister up there. This marriage was not really looked at very well by anybody. Black people, white people, everybody was like, Freddie, you sure about this? When people would ask him, why would you marry this white lady? His answer to them was, well, my first wife was the color of my mom, so my second wife is the color of my dad. Which is a weird answer. I would love to see a documentary about Miss Anna, or even just a really good, thoroughly detailed biography, like a book, because I do not like the idea of these women in the shadows of these successful men. Her role is just as important, and I think we have to be honest in saying that without Anna, there probably would not have been a Frederick Douglass.
So for those who are not aware of who Frederick Douglass was, Frederick Douglass was a prominent African American abolitionist. He was a writer and an orator in the 19th century. So throughout his life, Frederick Douglass was married twice. So he was married to Anna Marie, who was a free black woman who he met in Baltimore in the 1830s. They were married in 1838 and they had 5 children together. Okay. Mary is very important to this story because Anna Marie, his first wife, played this huge role in helping Frederick Douglass escape enslavement and make it to freedom. So Anna Marie, like I said previously, she was born a free black woman up north. And after she met Douglass, they came up with their own plan to be able to get Douglass to freedom. So Anna was responsible for providing Frederick with money, and she also went around and found him a sailor's uniform. And Frederick Douglass used this sailor's uniform in order to disguise himself and would sneak on a train to Philadelphia to freedom. And she also was responsible for helping him obtain his train ticket and gave him a bag of food for his journey. So it is needless to say that without Anna's support and assistance, it is unlikely that Douglass would have been able to escape enslavement and make his journey to freedom. So, like I said, they were married for at least 40 years because Anna ended up dying in 1882. And very quickly, Douglass married Helen Pitts, and Helen was a white woman, and she was a feminist and an abolitionist. So let's stop there and take an examination. So with Anna Marie, although she was a free black woman, she was illiterate. And for those who do not know, Frederick Douglass, again, was born as an enslaved man, but his slave owner, his mistress, was very fond of him, so she taught him how to read at a very early age. So although Frederick Douglass was enslaved, he still was able to read and he was still able to educate himself. So much so to the point where Frederick Douglass is known for having one of the most famous novels during this time period. What is it? The documentary of an enslaved person. But look it up, it's very interesting. But you have to realize that although all this happened, Frederick still allowed his wife Anna to be completely ignorant. He did not teach Anna how to read at all, even though she was responsible for his freedom. She helped edit the book that he ended up writing. And she gave him suggestions. She followed him everywhere. She was responsible for his braveness, but he still would not teach Anna how to read. And I feel like in so many ways that's an example of how some black men will still try to oppress the women who help them and are responsible for where they get. And it's very sad to see it, because as soon as Anna died, he married a white woman, and their marriage was extremely controversial because of the racial and social norms during this era. And he faced so much fucking criticism from both black and white communities because of his decision to marry this white woman. And despite it, he still remained he remained equal in his beliefs, but his actions did not reflect what it was that he was teaching and trying to educate other black people. So in the end, it definitely backfired him, but that was a reflection of his ego, in my most humble opinion.
So when Frederick Douglass was about 8 years old, he was given, remember at this stage in the game, this 8-year-old little boy would have been considered property, okay? He was given to a family in Baltimore. The wife of the master at that time, she had never owned a slave before. So she did not realize that it wouldn't have been appropriate to teach little Frederick how to read and write. She started out teaching him the alphabet. When her husband found out that she was teaching him, the alphabet and learning how to read and write, he made her stop, and he said that Frederick learning how to read and write would make him unfit to be a slave. He would no longer be able to be managed, and he would not be of value to his master as a slave. If you guys go to my Black History Month 2023 playlist, you will see on day 7, I made a video about the anti-literacy laws in the US. The United States is the only country in the world that had laws on the books prohibiting a group of people from being literate. The only country in the world. And of course, it was Black people. When Frederick found out as a little boy that he was not allowed to learn how to be literate, he says, and I'm quoting here, he says, "From that moment, I understood the pathway from slavery to freedom." Here's the irony. Miss Anna, his wife of 44 years, was not literate. She did not know how to read and write. And she was married to a man who was one of the most famous Americans in his time period. His reason for being famous is because he wrote one of the most widely read and best-selling slave narratives. The narrative of the life of Frederick Douglass, an American slave, was one of the best-selling books of the time period. This book changed the world, really. It changed the way people viewed enslaved people in this country. Frederick understood for his own journey how critical and how key it was for him to be literate, because that propelled him into the public space and allowed him to be a change maker, right? But this man, simultaneously reaping the benefits of being literate, was married to a woman for 44 years, and she was not literate. She could not have read any of the books that he wrote. It's sinister, isn't it? It's sinister when you think about it. It's dark. In public, in his public life, he was advocating for the freedom of Black people, the freedom of women. He was the only Black person at Seneca Falls. But behind the scenes, his own wife was disregarded. His own wife was basically a captive in her own home. And mind you, she was born free. Frederick was born enslaved. She was free her entire life. But her adult life was lived in a sort of bondage because she was not literate and did not have the same access to society as he did. It's dark.
So I wanted to give you guys another example of the lack of resilience when it comes to Black love within these Black communities. And for this topic, I wanted to talk about Martin Luther King Jr. So as we all know, Martin Luther King Jr. was married to Coretta Scott King, who was an activist as well as an advocate for civil rights. So for those who do not know, Martin Luther King was definitely engaged to a white woman before he had even met Coretta Scott King. And Martin Luther King, the white woman that he was in love with, was most definitely a lunch lady, and she was most definitely not as educated, nor did she have the big dreams and goals that Martin shared for himself. It's even documented that she said that she was not smart enough to be able to hold conversations with Martin Luther King. She would just sit there and listen, and I guess that just was enough for him, okay? But after Martin Luther King completed his studies at Boston University in 1953, he married Coretta Scott King, and they ended up having 4 children together. And this is where the concept of "I built the table" comes and connects, because Coretta had her own shit going before she even met Martin. Okay, Coretta was an extremely supportive partner to Martin Luther King, and she was extremely involved in the civil rights movement alongside of him. Okay, even after Martin Luther King was assassinated by the government, Coretta Scott King still upheld his legacy after all the bullshit that Martin Luther King did before and during their marriage. Okay, so there are allegations of Martin Luther King, and it surrounds the fact that he was engaged in extramarital affairs during his marriage to Coretta Scott King. We currently do not have the documentation to be able to verify it or not, but the CIA has the verification for all that information sealed. So like in the next 50 or so years, we will definitely get more information about the day-to-day life of Martin Luther King and his extramarital curriculars and what he did in his fucking free time. So it's clear that Martin and Coretta faced challenges in their marriages as a result of his work as an activist and pressures of public life. Now, despite these challenges, they remained committed to each other, and they shared this vision of a more just and equitable society. And after his assassination, like I said, Coretta continued to be an advocate for social justice and human rights. She ended up founding the Martin Luther King Jr. Center for Nonviolent Social Change, and she ended up working to promote peace and equality throughout her lifetime. So, what can we say about this? That Martin and Coretta's marriage truly was a reflection of their shared commitment to social justice, as well as their belief in the power of nonviolence to affect change. So those are my thoughts. It seems as if our society believes that once a man enters the picture, then he makes the woman greater. But in so many instances, and this is again within the past, present, as well as in the future of Black community or Black women, we are the prize. Ain't that what big academics said? I am the prize. Okay, so like, you enhance, but you are not the root of the power of Black women. And I do feel like the sooner that Black men get to this concept and this understanding, dating will be more peaceful.
What's more important, the fact that Martin Luther King is the man that fought for freedom, or the fact that he was cheating on his wife?
Jesus. I'm going to give you this example. He's a great father. He's a great businessman. He's a great CEO. He's an entrepreneur. He's such a boss.
He's a boss.
Look at that man. He's a boss. He's a great father. Look at him, that strong Black man.
Look at him being at his kid's game.
But you're cheating on your wife. You're not a good husband. But he's great in all these other aspects. How are you a great leader, a great CEO, a great Black man? You're not great. You're not great. God, you're not. That is triggering.
Yeah, for sure.
I'm a good dad. You're not a good dad because you don't respect me. How the fuck you showing these kids you a good father and you don't respect their mother? You're not a great dad, my nigga. You're an okay human.
Someone being a good person to you means they're a good person to you. Someone being a good person to everyone means that they're a good person.
Now, let's bring it full circle to modern day dating and modern day dating politics. Something that the funky and unfit boys and the podcast bros, they keep on asking, what do you bring to the table? So,
you said, what are you bringing to the table? Men are tired. I'm not bringing nothing to the table, baby. Sprinkle, sprinkle. If you want a woman to bring something to the table, go to IHOP. Go to the restaurant where you can tip her, baby. Sprinkle, sprinkle. Because if I bring something to the table, you're going to be mad because it's going to be another man who's going to not ask me to bring something to the table. And he's going to take care of the bill, them kids, and everybody else. And you, if you look broke. Okay? Sprinkle, sprinkle. That's how I roll. All right.
So let's go ahead and divulge in this conversation a little bit more because I find it to be very interesting. So originally the phrase, what do you bring to the table? It can be interpreted literally or socially, and it depends with the context in which you use this phrase. So quite literally, the phrase refers to what a person is bringing to a shared meal or a gathering. This often includes things like foods and drinks, utensils, forks and knives, and other little items, salt and pepper shakers, maybe a couple napkins, a basket. So that is what the phrase means literally. But in our social world, the phrase is often used to ask someone what do they have to offer in a particular situation or relationship. Par exemple, in a job interview, an employer might ask someone who is interested in a job, what do you bring to the table, to understand what skills, experiences, or qualities that they might bring to the company. So on the other end, in a romantic relationship, one person or a partner might ask the other one, what do you bring to the table, in order to understand what they can offer in terms of emotional support, things like shared experiences, as well as other aspects of the relationship. So that is an understandable question because, of course, if you're going to date someone, you'll want to know what type of qualities or what type of support or experiences someone might have. But the phrase that is in the way that is being used often promotes misogyny, and it also perpetrates a lot of harmful gender stereotypes as well as expectations. And I really want to talk about it. So within the social context of the phrase, what do you bring to the table? Oftentimes it reinforces the idea that women are expected to provide certain things in a relationship or situation, like emotional labor, domestic work, or physical attractiveness. And this can create an almost unrealistic or an unfair expectation specifically for women. And it often leads a lot of women to feel as if they're inadequate or shameful, or that they're unable to meet these desired expectations. So similarly, when this phrase is used in a more professional context, it also reinforces the idea that women are expected to prove themselves in ways that men are not. And this can lead to women being overlooked for job opportunities or promotions, or even being held to a higher standard from their male counterparts. And I feel like this also goes for relationships as well. And one thing about me, I'm not in the business of begging. I'm definitely not in the business of proving myself. I definitely feel like you can tell a tree by its fruit. If I'm working, I'm producing, I got my own shit going on, I don't feel the need to be able to prove who I am to no one. If you in my face and you want me, obviously you know enough, and you should be able to stick around long enough to be able to find out who I am. I ain't got to prove shit to nobody. So when we think about this phrase, what do you bring to the table? It can be used in so many different ways in order to perpetrate these stupid ass gender stereotypes, as well as these expectations of women. And it can contribute to the marginalization and the oppression of women, specifically Black women.
So I just made a video about how men are not evolving. But although men aren't evolving, misogyny has to evolve. It has to change to fit the time. What do you bring to the table felt like a valid question in misogynists' minds, because they saw women as lesser beings. Back during a time when women needed men to see some measure of success, that might have been a valid question. But there goes the misogyny, all evolving and shit. They're seeing that women are doing more. We're being more. We're making money. We can buy our own homes. We can buy our own cars. We can have a credit card. So the misogyny has to change, right? So now it becomes, you are too much. You have too many accomplishments. And now there's nothing for me to pour into. Men need to be able to bring a woman up. They need to be able to say that they poured into a woman, that they did all these things for a woman. So that then when it necessitates, they can bring that woman back down to rock bottom. And now misogyny has sort of plateaued. It started off as like Pikachu, and now it's Raichu, and it has no evolutions left. We, my friends, are witnessing the fall of misogyny. So go ahead and buckle yourselves in. It's going to get rough from here.
So when we are talking about those expectations, the gendered stereotypes, as well as like the marginalization of the oppression of women, I think it's important for us to understand gender roles, as well as traditional gender roles within marriage, and to be able to see how those things impact us still today in the modern world. So traditional gender roles in marriage often involve like a division of labor that separates the private sphere from the public sphere. So for those who do not know, the private sphere is considered the home and the family. That's where women are expected traditionally to serve. And the public sphere is the workplace or the community. And traditionally, that's where men are expected to serve. Now, historically, men have been expected to be the primary breadwinners and providers for their family, while women have been expected to take care of the home and children. And this division of labor oftentimes is referred to as the male breadwinner versus the female homemaker model. And it is rooted in the what is that shit called? The nuclear family, which is also a Eurocentric white supremacy construct. And it doesn't really fit into the way that Black people have relationships traditionally. And we'll get more into that the longer that you stick around and listen to this podcast episode. So in this model, the male breadwinner, female household maker, homemaker, men are often expected to work outside of the home, earn money to support their families, and women again are expected to take care of those domestic tasks. And those are things like cooking, cleaning, and childcare. And women are often expected to prioritize their family responsibilities over their own professional or personal goals, and are often discouraged from pursuing careers or education that might interfere with their domestic duties. I know for a fact, like growing up, my mama has always told me, and I do look up to my mom because my mom had me and my sister at an older age. My mom waited until she was 30 to have me, and then she had my sister 3 years later when she was 33, and she had been married for 5 years before she got pregnant. My mom always told me, when you have a baby, that baby is yours. As a woman, although it took two to make a baby, it is my responsibility socially as well as traditionally to take care of the baby on my own, to prioritize my baby, my family responsibilities over anything else, personal or professional. And I feel like that is something that a lot of Black women have been taught or have heard, and it doesn't even have to be from like a familial parent. It's just talking to women who have children and are married. Oftentimes this is what they tell us. They discourage us from getting married and discourage us from having children because all that responsibility is placed upon the backs of them, and oftentimes it is a burden, it is a hindrance. And in retrospect, for the traditional gender roles that come from men is also extremely draining and stressful. And I do think that for a lot of feminists, it is completely ignorant to count this out. I would not dare say that it's not hard to be a man, because for me to get up and go to work and be responsible for myself is a lot. So I can understand how stressful it could be for a Black man specifically to have that level of responsibility placed on top of their head. So these traditional gender roles within marriage are based on this idea that men or women have different roles and responsibilities within this private and public sphere, and these roles are largely determined based off of their biological sex and gender norms. And it's also important to make the statement that within different communities like the LGBTQIA communities, they do not adhere to these traditional gender roles, and that gives them the space to be able to come up with their own way of dating, their own way of living, and their own way of going through life. And it seems as if it is working for them because they're not forced into these models. And I think that more people should think about that when it comes to dating. You do not have to do what society tells you to do. Do what is easy for you and comes natural for your relationship, and is something that you and your partner or partners have agreed to.
There's no way you can claim to love Black people, especially as a Black man, knowing that only 1 out of every 4 Black women will get married in her lifetime. We have the lowest female marriage rate in the country, 25%. That means 75% of Black women will never ever know what it feels like to be proposed to. And if you care about the Black community, you got to care about saving the Black family, because the family is the essential institution of a community. And the only way you can save a family is to build a family. You can only build a family with a Black woman.
So let's take it back to the source. In many African cultures, gender roles within marriages are based on the idea of complementary opposites, where men and women have different but equally important roles to play in the family as well as in the community. Men are very often viewed and seen as protectors and providers of families and communities, while women are seen as nurturers and caretakers of the home and for children. However, these roles are not fixed, they're not rigid, and they oftentimes vary depending upon what specific cultural context and historical moment you're looking at. Par exemple, for example, in some African societies, a lot of women are leaders or warriors, and oftentimes play important roles in shaping politics or social structures. And y'all know that shit to be true. So when we're looking at the perspective of gender roles, within marriages from an Afrocentric perspective. Oftentimes, what we would do is emphasize the importance of cultural traditions and community values and how they shape these roles. And it's also important to recognize the diversity and the complexness of gender roles across different African societies and historical periods. But for this conversation specifically, I would love to look at the matriarchy within African American marriages. So, the matriarchy within African American marriages often refers to a family structure where women are held primarily within authority and decision making power. And this is often seen as a response to the history of the legacy of slavery, as well as racism, as well as the war on drugs. And because of these things, it often results in the marginalization and disempowerment of African American men. So, in matriarchal families, women are often seen as the primary breadwinners, the decision makers, and men take on more supportive roles such as childcare or domestic tasks. And these ideas often challenge gender roles as well as the expectations of a specific gender. But it often provides a space where women are comfortable or they feel safe asserting their agency as well as their anatomy. It's important to keep in mind that matriarchy within African American marriages is not a monolithic or a universal phenomenon, and it can depend on whatever specific cultural context or historical moment we are looking at. But it's also important to recognize that the idea of matriarchy within African American marriages is oftentimes a source of tension or conflict within families and communities, and it challenges these gender roles that the white community, Eurocentricity, and America have placed upon us, and it is often seen as a threat to masculinity and authority. I would love to say that during my adolescence, there definitely was a time where there were several different times where my mom played the role of the matriarch within the family, which means she was the head of the household. There definitely was a period of time during my childhood when my dad's company was on strike and he was not making money, and it went on for about a year. So my mom was most definitely the primary breadwinner within our family, and my dad stayed at home. He was the caretaker. He was responsible for us. He was responsible for making sure the household was clean and orderly. And I know for a fact that it was a source of tension because men without money are miserable, and men without power, especially in America, are miserable because they feel as if their duty is not being fulfilled or their purpose in life. They feel as if it goes against the natural grain. But there are so many different positions that Black women have been placed in where they have to be the matriarch. There are examples where women are widowed and they are forced to take over as the head of the household because their partner died. Examples where men are put in jail or killed or moved away. So there are many reasons for women that have to take over the family stature. And I think that I don't know. I don't know what I think. So many men act as if marriage or a committed relationship is out of the question, but deep down inside, I feel as if they know that marriage benefits men so much more than it benefits women. And that's why that is the root of the question. What did you bring to the table? Well, why would you want to know what I bring to the table so I can see how you can benefit me? So, some people often believe that marriage benefits men more than women because historically marriage has been structured in a way that it privileges men over women. A great example of this will be like in many different cultures and different societies, women are often expected to take on domestic caregiving roles within the household, while men are expected to work outside the home and provide for the family. And anyone who's ever been in this position or seen a woman be in this position knows that maintaining a household and taking care of children is an exactly separate job. So you are waking up, you clocking in, you taking care of the household, you taking care of the kids, and then you drop them off if you can, and then you clock in to your actual job, and that's if you only have one other job. And then as soon as you get off, you clock back in and you work as a wife, and you take care of the household and the children. And the only responsibility for the man at this part, when it comes to the domestic labor, is going out, working a job, and bringing home money and food. You know what I'm saying? That's at a very basic level. I'm not saying that that is all a husband consists of, but those are the very minimalistic requirements that it takes in order to be considered a very good husband. Okay? So there are, without a shadow of a doubt, so many inequalities that can be exacerbated within marriages, particularly in cases where women are expected to prioritize their husband needs and desires over their own. And I know that so many people grew up with fathers, especially within the Black community, where they often have fathers and their fathers don't speak, they don't talk, they get off work, they sit down, they twiddle their thumb, they might watch the game, they may or may not, talk or deal with the children. But once he off from work, and then be wondering why they wife saying they tired. Baby, she is Kevin Gates, baby. She got 2 jobs, 10 jobs. She don't get tired, but she is exhausted. So those are the inequalities that can be seen. And moreover, a lot of divorce lawyers are saying that modern divorces are basically rooted in soccer moms who are doing the majority of the work, and the husbands are not doing anything, and they are soliciting the divorce. And that leads us to where this conversation does end, which is the state of marriage today. And I want to leave you with this. It is important to recognize that the question of whether marriage benefits men or women is complex, but it depends on the range of the individual social and cultural factors. But it is important to promote healthy, equitable, and respectful relationships. Make sure that you are considerate within your relationships and within your family dynamics. And it's also important to recognize and address these ongoing challenges and inequalities faced upon women and other marginalized groups. This is why I say that I built the table. I brought the table. I chopped the tree down for the table, because as a Black woman who is independent, who is educated, who is degreed, when you hear all these negative things that are associated with marriage, and for women is not as beneficial as it would be if I were a man, it makes you wonder, what is the purpose other than to say that I have a lifetime partner? Everything that I once could not do, that my ancestors could not do, I can do now as a single woman. I can get a bank account. I can be able to buy a house. I can still get a job as a woman. So there's not really that much of a need for me to get married. Now, if they were to roll back marriages and change the way that we look at marriages in America, which they are doing now, then that would be a different story.
So my 8-year-old daughter just approached me to educate me on something she had just learned. She was watching a show about cats and had learned the story about the Black Plague, which was caused by fleas that were on black rats at the time. However, the Catholic Church misinformed everyone because they believed that black cats were evil. After the Catholic Church misinformed everyone, they started getting rid of black cats. Because of that, the rat population grew and the Black Plague ran rampant. So this got me thinking about misinformation in general. And somehow in my ADHD brain, I skipped right over to the topic of marriage. I just started thinking to myself how interesting that men were able to package marriage as something women want, and that men don't. Looking back through history, of course a woman was excited whenever a man wanted to marry her, since she was bound financially to whatever a man was able to bring in. Women didn't typically work, they were not encouraged to go to college, they couldn't own property or have their own credit cards or bank accounts, and so of course finding the right suitor would be something that you would celebrate, I suppose. I personally would have chosen to be a spinster, but that's neither here nor there. So fast forward to today. And I see one article after another about how disappointing the dating scene is for cis-het men. Basically, at this point, I just imagine Tinder has a shit ton of men on there just waiting for women to pop up, and they never show. Because to be real honest with you, men benefit greater from marriage than women. You heard that right. Women are seeking men for a partnership, whereas traditionally men were seeking out women as caretakers, not necessarily for partnership. And now all I see are cishet men crying about, why aren't there more women that make us lunches and rub our backs? Because men nowadays don't know how to be partners. Spare me with the not all men. We understand that, as long as you do too. I just find it so funny that now everyone is so surprised that not all women want to get married. Why would they? Women have been undervalued and underappreciated for fucking centuries. And then you've got the men over here saying, if things were just back to how they used to be. You know, the good old days. And usually they're referring to the 1950s housewife. They'll even try to tell you that women were happy and fulfilled then. In 1952, they had seen 50,000 patients, the majority female, and they had been lobotomized. And millions of women were prescribed barbiturates for anxiety and depression. So the fact that so many men want to spread misinformation regarding marriage, how there are just no more good women out there, yada yada, and their inability to self-reflect, and how easily other men that are disappointed about the dating scene soak in this information from these Tates of the world. You know, these tiny balding men with a complex. It's honestly fucking sad. We live in a patriarchal society. Y'all are literally doing this to yourselves. I mean, this is something that's easily fixable, right? With minimal effort. Guys, make some fucking effort instead of wasting time making videos whining about how you're not getting what you want.
Let's look at marriages today. So within the last year, there have been a lot of different legislations that have been passed in order to force people almost into marriages. Like,
the city of Shawnee, Kansas has banned all co-living in every residential area? What the? Fundamentally, what this means is that any group of 4 or more adults who are unrelated can no longer share the same unit, whether that's a condo, an apartment, or a house. So that means me, my brother, my sister, and our friend Joe, we can all share the same place still, right? Well, no, they define it as even if one person is unrelated, then the entire group's considered unrelated. Now, I don't know specifically what their initial goal was, what issues or problems they saw fit to try to get rid of, but this seems like the worst possible way to do it. They just go nuclear on the whole practice, which is meant to make housing more affordable as we see prices rise all across the country, even right here in the metro. I hope this doesn't spread to other communities in the city, but we'll have to wait and see. Hopefully we can find, at least in the short term, some lawsuits or some potential loopholes to help protect people who are renting.
When we are looking at marriages today specifically, I really wanted to look at the concept of the no-fault divorce, because in a lot of southern states, a lot of different states are retracting the right to a no-fault divorce. So let's go ahead and get into it. For those who do not know, a no-fault divorce is a type of divorce in which neither spouse is required to prove that the other spouse is at fault for the dissolution of the marriage. In a no-fault divorce, either spouse can seek a divorce without having to prove that the other spouse has engaged in misconduct, wrongdoing. Instead, the divorce is granted simply because the marriage is broken or because the couple has irreconcilable differences. Yes. So although no fault divorces are available in all 50 states, a lot of different states are deciding to roll it back. Okay. So either when it comes to these no-fault divorces, either a party can simply state that the marriage is broken and the court will give them a divorce. And on one hand, no-fault divorce can provide an important legal mechanism for individuals to end marriages that they are no longer working. And this can be particularly important for a lot of Black women who face these additional borders and challenges when it comes to leaving abusive or unhealthy relationships. So in the past, Black women who may have felt trapped in unhealthy marriages because of social, cultural, or economic factors, they may have lacked the legal and financial resources to leave. So with no-fault divorces, they often help reduce the stigma and shame associated with divorce, and they can provide a way for individuals to end marriages that are no longer serving their need. Um, and then that's important too, because out of all women in America, Black women are the most unmarried group. And although a lot of people are looking at that in a negative light, I look at it as a positive thing because, number one, a lot of Black women are starting to understand their worth. A lot of Black women are waiting to become educated before they get married, or they have to be educated before they get married. A lot of Black women are not willing to tolerate just in and everything from Black women. So that's good from Black men, and that's great for them. Okay. Number two, most divorces are initiated by women. 70% of divorces are initiated by women. And that is a number that is steadily increasing because it seems as if women are learning their worth and men are slacking when it comes to the evolution and the growth of masculinity and what masculinity looks like. So when we are looking at no-fault divorces, you have to also acknowledge that they do have a negative impact on Black communities. This is particularly in cases where divorce leads to economic instability, it leads to child custody battles, or other legal and social challenges. Black women specifically may be disproportionately impacted by these challenges because they often have higher rates of poverty and lower levels of wealth and resources. We can see this when Black women are more likely to face challenges when it comes to securing stable housing, as well as employment and child support after the divorce, and it makes it very difficult for them to prove themselves and their families. Black women also face these additional challenges in legal systems because of the bias and the discrimination, and that also makes it more difficult for them to secure these equitable outcomes when it comes to child custody. So, yeah, it's important to realize that no fault divorces really do have an impact on Black communities. And we really should be working on finding ways to promote these more safe and equitable households, as well as protecting the rights and the safety of these individuals who may need to leave these unhealthy and abusive relationships. But the America that we currently live in right now does not want to do that. So let's talk about the state of no fault divorces in the state of Texas. So there are a lot of conservative politicians within multiple states, but specifically right now in Texas, who are gunning to push the repeal of them. So it's not this huge fat ass mystery that after they come for abortion, next they're coming for birth control and different types of contraception, and they're making it easier for you to get married and have babies, and harder for you to be able to leave and be single by yourself. So a lot of these things are out of our control. So last year, the Republican Party in Texas added this language to its platform, and it called for the end to the no-fault divorce. And they wrote, and I quote, "We urge the legislature to rescind unilateral no-fault divorces, to support covenant marriage, and to pass legislation extending the period of time in which a divorce might occur to 6 months after the date of filing the divorce." So researchers who often track the emergence of no-fault divorce laws state by state over this period have found that the reform led to a dramatic drop in the rates of female suicide and domestic violence, as well as decreases in spousal suicide of women. And today, more than 2/3 of all heterosexual divorces in the United States are initiated by women. So it is important when we're talking about this. We're talking about Steven Crowder, who is a native of Texas, and he is a podcaster slash YouTuber. He was recently seen cursing out and verbally abusing his 8-month pregnant wife.
Because I drew a boundary. I drew a boundary. No, you just did it. I drew a boundary in abusive and cruel. You are not taking the car. Because if you refuse to do wifely things, then I will go pick up the groceries.
There is no groceries. I do have
steaks, wood pellets, my grill. I know it's an unreasonable request, but I'll go do it. How about you first? Hillary, how do you respect the man? Yes. How do you man? How do you man receive love and respect? No. How do you man? No, you're not taking the car.
Stephen,
you're not taking the car.
Stephen,
you are not.
Then I will ask someone to pick me up. Would you like me to ask?
Oh, that's right.
It's not correct, Stephen.
Give it an Uber.
Okay, Stephen, I can't.
Feeling some constraints?
Stephen.
Like, I can't
Stephen.
go. Listen to me. You want to walk out right now? Listen to me. I can't go to the gym. I can't go to my parents. I can't call my friends. I can't be home. You're going to take the car and leave me here. Hillary, just think of how boxed in you've made me.
What do you need me to pick up? I'll get it. I'll be back when I'm back.
No, that doesn't work either. You'll be back when you're back. That doesn't work either.
Stephen.
Do you understand the difference between my life being set to the second and you going, I'll be back when I'm back?
Stephen.
And making it work. The only way out of this is discipline and respect. It's the only way out of it, or we're at an impasse.
We are at an impasse.
Good. Because you can't have any discipline or respect.
Yeah.
There you go. You throw your hand, you give up so easily.
I don't give up, Stephen.
Hillary, you give up so easily. I just said the only way out of this is discipline and respect. And you said, then we're at an impasse.
Stephen, no, we are at an impasse, okay? I love you, but Stephen, your abuse is sick. Your abuse
Watch it.
is sick.
Watch it. Fucking watch it.
I'm gonna let go. I'll get what you need me to get. And I need some space. We need to just stop engaging for a little bit, okay? I love you. I love you very much.
I don't love you. That's the big problem. I've never received love from you. And the fact is, when I go, look, I need you to do A, B, C, and D, you just be disciplined about it, you go, no. But I love you more than life itself. Okay. Put on some gloves. No. But I love you more than life itself. That's not fair. That's not fair, and it's disingenuous. Hillary, you're right. We're at an impasse. Become someone, listen to me, day in and day out, worthy of a wife. No, not as a wife. I didn't say as a wife. Hillary, come on now.
I'm not going to engage. I'm not going to engage anymore. I'm going to go. I'll text me what you need. I'll get you what you need. I love you. I'm committed to you.
Put on some gloves. Are you committed enough to do those things?
I'm not going to.
Are you committed enough to do those things? You're not committed to anything. You're not committed to anything. You just said I love you. I'm committed to it. Walk the dogs. Put on some gloves. Walk the dogs. Put on some gloves. Are you committed enough to do those things? Are you committed enough to do those things? Are you committed enough to do those things?
I'm good.
Walk the dogs. Put on some gloves. Are you committed enough to get the medication the dogs take? No, you take that in.
And it's because his wife was unhappy in the relationship and she initiated a divorce, and he feels like it should be illegal for the bitch to leave, and cussed her out and told the bitch she was stupid while she was carrying his unborn child. Now, this is white people business, and me, I'm in the business of staying out of white people business and minding my own black owned business. But I do feel like when we're talking about no fault divorces, that you cannot discuss it without talking about Steven Crowder, who is an extreme Christian right wing, white conservative man who has absolutely no care in the world about women, specifically the one who is married to him and carrying his unborn child. But I digress. That's why it's important for women to be able to have the right to be able to lead marriages, and why it's okay. It should be a right for no fault divorces to exist, because if she had, it's gonna keep him accountable, and he'll shut the fuck up and do what he needs to do.
So Texas GOP has added to its platform that they want to get rid of no-fault divorce, which means that the woman has to prove infidelity or abuse in order to get divorced. And Republicans all over the nation are pushing for this in other state legislatures. So I would advise young women today to not get married legally. Have a ceremony. Have a commitment with your partner. Have a nice wedding, whatever, but do not trap yourselves into the confines of the law with divorce, because when we say that they're not going to stop with banning transgender care and getting rid of gay marriage and continuing to oppress people of color, they're not going to stop with marginalized groups. They are going to go after women, eventually men, but right now they're going after women. And banning no-fault divorce is the most ridiculous fascist thing I've ever seen. It's another way to trap women. It's another way to control women. And so honestly, as a 41-year-old divorced woman, to the young women of today, don't trap yourselves. Don't file the papers. Just be in love and have a commitment.
So when people ask the question, what do you bring to the table? I think even as a birthright, the fact that you are capable of birthing a child and being able to create life at a very minimum is something that all men cannot do within of itself. I want women to be able to feel proud of themselves and feel as if they are the prize. And I hope that men within our generation are able to look at women past the sexual and past the physical, and to be able to see that women are far more than what these niggas on the internet that have never had a piece of good pussy before in their life are saying, because we are the table. Matter of fact, we built the table. If there's ever a king, you have to assume that there is a queen right there on his side, whispering in his ear, telling the king, who is fucking brainless, which way to go, which countries to attack, and what move to make less, because without the neck, the head would not be able to swivel. So yes, we play different roles, but it does not mean that your role is more important than the role that I play, and vice versa, which is why it's so important for us to have these very honest conversations, not only amongst you and your partner that you're deciding to love, but as well as having these conversations and concepts with your homeboys and your friends, because this shit is not right. There is such a rise in incels and black men who truly do disdain black women, and there's a rise in black women who are choosing to be independent and by themselves, who are still open to getting married to black men, but that doesn't seem reciprocated on the receiving end. Just know, if you come over here, bitch, don't ask me about no goddamn table. You can take that shit and you can eat it outside if you got anything to do with me.
Shout out to the slaves.
Yeah, shout out to the slaves. You feel me? Shout out to Harriet Tubman.
Shout out to she's a real nigga.
Shout out to the real niggas.
And shout out again to all those people who hate my guts.
Y'all are doing a justice and an effort to the world. Keep breaking these men down one at a time.
You are obsessed and sick.
And we are back with the big black shout out, the blackest shout out in the world. For those who do not know, the big black shout out is an opportunity to help circulate the black dollar back into our communities and for audience members to explore black owned hidden gems. So today I want to shout out my homegirl Z. Shout out to Z. She is the owner of Rankin Dispatching, and it is located here in Starkville, Mississippi. Z said, and I quote, here to find you the best quality loads at the best prices. So if you was a truck driver, you know what I'm saying, and you not in the state of Florida, but anywhere else in the United States, and you need someone to help you dispatch, when I tell you Z is a hard-working young lady, she gonna get to that bag, and she gonna help you get to that bag. Look at this. This is her quote. We keep your wheels rolling and your money earning. Hey, if that ain't guaranteed money, I don't know. Z said that she is a self-taught freight dispatcher and she helped drivers find loads and help operators take their business to the next level. If you are interested in working with Z as a freight dispatcher or for an operator, make sure you find her on social media at Ranking Dispatching on Facebook. And she also has a website, rankingdispatch.com. So shout out to you, Z. You make your motherfucking coin. You do your motherfucking big one. And hopefully the truck drivers will press the horn toot toot for you. I just want to thank you guys so much for taking the time out to listen to Freestyle 17. I built the motherfucking table because I did. I got me some big scissors and I just cut them down. I actually would cut a lawn full of grass with a pair of toenail clippers before I let a nigga tell me that I'm not the prize and ask me what the fuck I built to the table. So, you just make sure you keep that in mind when we are thinking about black love and black relationships and black families. It's important for us to make sure we're looking at both perspectives. We're looking at the negatives, the positives, as well as the Afrocentric perspective and doing what is right for us and what feels right for us, okay? You do not have to subscribe to societal norms if you do not feel comfortable, and if your partner is willing to, you guys can definitely work something out that benefits the both of you. So with that in mind, I want to thank you all for choosing to be Afrocentric today. Please remember that Black Lives Matter. Make sure that you listen and protect black women, and the only thing that you must do within this lifetime is be black and die. And here at the Afrocentric Podcast, we are just civilized people having civilized conversations. I'll talk to you guys soon. Bye-bye.
These young boys today, what do she bring to the table? The hell you mean, man? What do your ass bring to the table? You got a woman that can come to the table that can make another you. What else she need to slide up to the table with? What about your job? What happened to men who were supposed to be responsible? Do you know that it's our job to take care of a woman and some children, to have a family? That's our damn job.
But what happens to when the woman tell you, I don't need a man, Steve?
Well, they need to what? Okay, if you don't, how that's working? How that's working? Who don't need no man?
I'm independent. I can do for myself.
Yeah, but why do you want to? Yeah, okay, you can drop a transmission. You can sandblast your house. But hell, do you want to?
No.
If somebody could get out there and drop this transmission for you and sandblast your house, why don't you go get your nails done? I'm not trying to reduce a woman to nothing else. Be all you can be. But damn, who don't need a man? That's a lie. What man don't need a woman? I tell you what. Try to live without them. Try to live your life without women. This ain't about la-da-da, man. This is some bullshit without women. If it wasn't for women, what would you? He said, if women did not exist, all the money in the world would have no meaning. Dog, women is everything. They catch me out. They the lick, man. But these young boys done forgot it because these women out here, they've had to be independent because they ain't got the right man.
Okay.
But this system of marriage is still good.
Okay.
This system of a man taking care of a woman, that's really how it's supposed to be. All the rest of it's bullshit, man. And y'all need to quit tricking yourself with this new way of thinking. Because this new way of thinking ain't getting y'all no damn where. I'm sorry.